Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophets Speak. Today we continue with our study of Sefer Mishlei, the book of Proverbs. We are currently in chapter 18 and about to read the second half of chapter 18, starting with verse 15. Verse 15 begins with the words as follows, 15. Lev navon yikne da'as, ve'ozen chachamim tivakesh da'as. The heart of one who understands. So here, heart really should be translated as the mind, or the psychology of a navon, one who understands, one who truly seeks understanding, acquires knowledge. The ear of the wise, right, is searching out knowledge. This verse is meant to be a contrast to 2 verses ago in 13, where a meshiv davar b'terem yishma, a person who answers questions before he listens, and a yishma iveles, such a person iveles hilo, it is foolish for him. So in other words, it's foolish to talk before you know what you're talking about. So on the contrast is a smart person, a person who truly wants to acquire knowledge, understands that he needs to listen, he needs to acquire knowledge. That's why ozen chachamim, the ears of the wise, will seek out knowledge rather than just talk before they know what they're talking about. Verse 16, matan adam yarchiv lo. There's various ways of understanding this verse, but it could mean matan adam, a gift for a person, yarchivlo, widens things for him, makes things better for him. In other words, when one receives a gift, that's how some translate it. If you look at the Malbim, he understands this as matan adam, a person who is a maton, a person who is a giver, a person who yarchivlo. It ends up opening up his life wide. It ends up widening his prospects in life by being a giving person. There are some people try to achieve their things in life through being tough, through pushing their way, fighting their way. Some people make their way in life and build their success based on being generous, being nice, and spreading goodwill among others. Yachivlo, and eventually that comes back to you and people treat you well as well. V'lifnei gidolim yanchenu. Such a lifestyle puts you in front of great men, gives you access to great people, leaders, people, who are truly good and are looking out for the good of others. That would be the Malbim's way of understanding it, and I like that, so that's what I used. Of course, there are other ways of understanding this verse. Tzadik harishon b'rivo. It's very often when people are fighting and when there's a disagreement between one and the other. I'm reading verse 17 now, right? The first person to present his case gets the chance to set the tone of the argument. So the first one in the argument always seems like the right one. Uvore eu, right? Vachakaro. But then his friend has to come and search him out. In other words, it's the job of the next one to come and choker is the word used in Hebrew for to search out, but it also specifically refers to the chakirot, the cross-examination that occurs in a court case. So the next one has to come and cross-examine him to show that his position is right and not the first person. But the first person sets the tone of the conversation. In court, this is true, of course, in a court case, it's also true in conversation. The first guy gets to set the tone of the story. Verse 18, Midyanim yashbis hagoral, right? Midyanim, again, as we've had this several times, are the people who fight. It comes from the language of Dayan. They're constantly bringing each other to fight with each other, to argue with each other, to disagree with each other, both in court specifically, but in general. Yashbis hagoral. Sometimes a goral, a lot, ends the fighting. In other words, sometimes when nobody can agree with each other, the only way to go about it is to draw lots. The luck of the draw, uvein atzumim yafrid. And it can separate between people who are fighting with each other. So it's almost like a counterweight to the first verse. The first guy seems right. The second guy has a chance to prove himself right. And sometimes in those kinds of disagreements, we may come to a conclusion as to who's right, but sometimes we never do. And sometimes we have to resort to a goral. Verse 19, Och nifsha mikiryat oz. There's various ways of understanding this verse. I'm going to translate it, and I'm going to give you two approaches: the approach of Rashi, the approach of the Metzudos. Two classic approaches that are pretty much one opposite the other. So the simple translation is Och nifsha mikiryat oz, right? A brother who is wronged, right, is stronger than a stronghold. A kiryat oz is a stronghold or a fortress, right? Umidyonim, and those that fight, or this kind of fight, kivriach armon, is like the bolt that holds together, that locks up the palace door, the iron bar that seals the door shut. Now, Rashi understands this in a bad way. When I say bad, in other words, this is a criticism, and they're saying that the ach nifsha, a brother can ruin, right, a kiryat oz. When a brother, ach nifsha, when a brother rebels and fights with his brother, right, that can ruin the relationship which otherwise would be a kiryat oz. The relationship of family is like a stronghold that protects us, but when a brother rebels, he ruins it. So ach nifsha mi kiryat oz, right? Umidyonim, and the fights that occur within the family are like the bar of a palace, because the bar of a palace opens and closes. Right? It's not like, as opposed to the door of the palace, as opposed to the wall, which is solid, which is always there, which doesn't open or close. It's like the door with the bolt that gets open and closed. So it's no longer a reliable form of protection. All right? So in other words, he looks at the briach armon as a weakness as opposed to a strength. He looks at it as something that opens and closes, which is not reliable. Metzudos, on the other hand, looks at it kind of the opposite way. That ach nifsha, that even in ach nifsha, right, even a brother who rebels, mi kiryat oz, can still benefit from the stronghold of the family. In other words, this is coming to say that even a rebellious family member will still be able to come back, and as opposed to a non-family member that gets into a fight with someone, may be banished for good. But a ach nifsha can still benefit mi kiryat oz, from the stronghold of the family. Umidyanim, right? and some fighters, I made a mistake. I must apologize. Let me go back to Rashi's understanding. I've confused Rashi and Metzudos together. I did start off correctly. Ach nifsha mi kiryat oz, a rebellious brother can ruin the stronghold of a family. Umidyanim givriach armon, and when they fight, it becomes like the bolt of the palace, which is strong and powerful and holds him out. Okay, that's how Rashi reads the verse. The Metzudos reads the verse as follows: Ach nifsha mi kiryat oz, that a brother who is rebellious, right, can still benefit from the kiryat oz, from the stronghold of the family. Umidyanim, and when they fight kivriach armon, it's like the bolt of a palace, which can open and let him in, right? So I'm sorry, I apologize for confusing the two perushim, the two commentaries before. Verse 20, mi pri pi ish tispabit, no, from the fruit of a person's mouth, a man's stomach is satisfied, meaning often our way in life, whether or not we are successful in our careers, in our finances, etc., often has to do with the way we speak and what we say, to whom we say, when we say. It's especially tivuat sifasav yispa, the tivuah, the produce that is earned through the words of our lips. Yispa is satisfying. In other words, what we say often is the difference between the person who is successful and the person who is not successful. And there's many contexts within which we can see that being so true. Maves v'chayim biyad lashon, life and death are in the hand of the tongue. Once again, so many times in the book of Proverbs, over and over again, we discuss the importance and the significance of speech. good speech and bad speech, lying speech and truthful speech, friendly speech and speech that brings about strife. Life and death is in the hand of our speech. V'ohaveha, right? Yochal pirya, and those who love it, right? In other words, ones who love speech and they're constantly talking and they never stop talking, Yochal Pirya will eat the fruits. Some look at this as a bad thing. In other words, if you can't stop talking, you're going to end up eating the fruits of your actions. In other words, you will suffer for it. Or it could mean proper speech. Yochal Pirya will eat the fruits and benefit from it. It could mean both, and probably does mean both. Matzah isha matzah tov. If a person has found a woman who is right and appropriate for him, he has found something good. Vayofek ratzon me'Adonai, and he has received favor from God. This is just stating, finding the right relationship, the right person helps one and brings one closer to God and brings one closer to a proper life. Famous verse, Matzah Isha Matzah Tov. This is how many times this verse is repeated at celebrations of marriages and so on. Tachanunim, this is verse 23. Tachanunim yidaber rosh v'ashir ya'aneh azus. Right? This is just an observation of human nature. The rush, the poor person, the person who is down, the type of speech that he uses is always begging for mercy. He is saying tachanunim. He is beseeching people for mercy, for help, for and so on. But the rich man, who's usually arrogant, he speaks in an arrogant way. He stands up and talks like he knows what's going on, and he's always standing up like the big boss. This is just an observation about human nature. 24, and the final verse of chapter 18. Ish re'im lihisro eha. Again, there are several ways to understand this. If we look at Rashi, first let me read the verse. Ishreim, the people that are friendly, lehisro'ea, are the ones that one is friendly with or keeps company with. V'yesh ohev davek me'ach, and sometimes a friend, a bond of friendship or bond of love between friends can be even stronger than the bond of brotherhood between family members. So, Rashi learns this as Ishrei Imli Yisro'ea, acquiring friends for the purpose of friendship is a good thing, because Yeshohev Davek Me'ach. There are lovers, not in the romantic sense here, but lovers in the sense of friendship. Davek Me'ach can be even closer than a brother. The Malbim looks at it as a very different way, and I kind of like the way he looks at this. Is we know sometimes if a person has one friend, there's a saying, and the Malbim quotes this saying, that if a person has only one friend, we know that's a very good friend. If a person has 1,000,000 friends, he probably doesn't really have any friends. And there's obviously truth to that statement. A person I'm friendly with everybody, he doesn't really have that close bond that one develops with one or two close friends. So Yisraim, if you're a man of Re'im, right, of lots and lots of friends, lehis ro'ea, right, then that is just a bunch of bad friends, right, from the language of ra rather than re'ut, the language of bad rather than re'ut, friendship. V'yesh ohev, right, davek me'ach. Right, but if you have just one ohev, one lover, that can be even closer than a brother. So that's how Malbim looks at it. One friend is a good friend. Lots of friends is no friends. Anyway, this concludes chapter 18. Thank you so much for studying chapter 18 with me together. I look forward to studying chapter 19 and, of course, the rest of this beautiful book of Proverbs together. I wish you a wonderful day. If you do want to contact me directly, feel free to email me at weinrebsaul, that is WEINREBSAUL @gmail.com. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.